The morning sun slipped through the wide glass doors of the hotel, spreading golden light across the polished floor. The lobby smelled of fresh flowers, the kind that were changed every day by the staff. Behind the front desk stood a young man named Ravi, dressed in a plain white shirt, dark trousers, and a neat tie. His name tag read Ravi, front desk. To the guests walking in, he looked like any other hotel employee, someone there to greet them, check them in, and answer their questions. But Ravi was not what he seemed. He was the true owner of the hotel, a place that once belonged to his late father. Years ago, his father had dreamed of building a hotel where people would feel not just like customers, but like family. For a time, that dream had come alive. Guests used to leave with smiles, and staff worked with pride. But after his father's passing, Ravi moved abroad to complete his studies. Managers were hired, new staff joined, and slowly, the heart of the hotel began to fade. Complaints reached him through letters and messages, service had become cold, staff were careless, and guests no longer felt welcome. Ravi felt the weight of disappointment, not only for himself but for his father's dream. So, he returned. But he did not return as the rich owner who could give orders from an office. He chose to stand quietly at the front desk, to see the hotel through the eyes of its guests and staff. He wanted to know the truth. He wanted to feel the pulse of the place his father had loved so much. The bell at the entrance chimed softly, pulling him out of his thoughts. The first guest of the day walked in. She was a young woman carrying a medium-sized suitcase. Her dark hair fell loosely around her face, and her eyes looked tired, almost as though she hadn't slept properly in days. Her clothes were simple, and she clutched her bag tightly as if afraid of losing it. Ravi gave her a gentle smile. "Good morning. Welcome. May I help you with check-in?" The woman nodded, her voice soft as she replied, "Yes. My name is Mira. I have a booking." She handed him her ID card. Ravi noticed her hand trembled slightly as she placed it on the desk. She looked around the lobby with searching eyes, as if she wanted to make sure she was truly safe there. Ravi processed her booking quickly, speaking kindly, and then handed her the room key. "Your room is on the 4th floor. The elevators are to your left," he said. Mira gave a faint smile, the kind that carried both gratitude and sadness. Before walking away, she whispered almost to herself, "Thank you, it feels safe here." The word safe echoed in Ravi's heart long after she stepped into the elevator. Why had she chosen that word? Safe from what? It was not his place to ask, yet his mind kept circling back to it. He wondered what story she carried with her, what weight made her long for safety. The day continued with the flow of many guests. A businessman rushed in, speaking loudly on his phone. A family with 2 children laughed as they checked in, the kids running excitedly toward the lobby fountain. An elderly couple arrived quietly, holding hands, their eyes filled with memories more than words. Each guest brought a different mood, a different piece of life into the building. From behind the counter, Ravi watched and listened. He realized that every face told a story. Some were easy to read, others were hidden behind silence, but each person carried secrets, joys, and burdens. He felt that the hotel was more than just a place to sleep. It was like a stage where people arrived with their private lives, if only for a short time. Later that night, when the lobby grew quiet and most lights dimmed, Ravi remained at the desk. His fellow workers had left for their breaks, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He leaned back slightly, looking at the portrait of his father that still hung on the far wall. "Is this what you wanted me to see, Father?" he whispered softly. "Not just the walls, not just the furniture, but the people who come here? Their stories." He closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of Mira's trembling hand and her soft whisper about safety. He thought of the old couple's quiet bond, the children's laughter, the businessman's rushing footsteps. Each of them carried something within them. That night, Ravi made a quiet promise. He would not only learn about his guests, but he would also bring back the heart his father had dreamed of. This hotel would not be only about rooms and bills. It would become a place where people felt understood, where they felt seen, where they could breathe freely, even if for a short time. As he placed the last file back into the drawer, he looked around the empty lobby once more. The golden light of the chandeliers flickered softly against the walls. The silence was deep, yet comforting. He knew his journey had just begun. Ravi smiled faintly to himself, his heart both heavy and hopeful. The hotel was no longer just a building. It was a doorway into countless untold stories. And he was ready to listen. The morning began with the soft humming of cleaning carts moving along the hallways. Ravi stood at the front desk, arranging papers, though his mind was elsewhere. All night, he had thought about the young woman, Mira, who whispered that the hotel felt safe. He wondered what kind of journey had brought her here. The elevator doors opened, and Mira stepped out quietly. She wore the same clothes from the day before, and her face looked pale, as if sleep had not visited her. She approached the desk slowly, holding her room key. "Good morning," Ravi greeted with warmth. "Did you rest well?" Mira gave a faint smile, but her eyes betrayed her. "Yes, the bed was comfortable," she replied, though her voice did not carry much strength. Ravi did not push further. He had learned something already: people often say one thing while their eyes tell another. Instead, he offered her a map of the city. "If you need any help finding places, let me know. The cafe down the street has good breakfast." Mira hesitated, then said softly, "Thank you. I might go later." She walked away toward the doors, holding her bag close. As he watched her leave, Ravi felt a growing curiosity. Not because he wanted to intrude, but because he sensed she was carrying a silent storm inside her. His father used to say, "Some guests come for rest, some for food, but some come because they have nowhere else to go. Treat them gently, for they are the ones who need us most." Later that day, while Ravi was helping another guest, the housekeeping supervisor came to the desk with a file. "Room 404's guest left early this morning without requesting cleaning," she said. But when I checked the corridor, the "Do Not Disturb" sign was still on her door. Ravi nodded. "It's fine. Leave it for today. Maybe she just wants privacy." He tried to focus on his work, yet the thought of Mira lingered. Privacy was natural, but there was a heaviness around her that could not be ignored. In the evening, Mira returned. She looked even more tired than before. She walked past the lobby quickly, almost hoping not to be noticed. But Ravi called out gently, "Good evening, Miss Mira. Would you like some tea? It's complimentary for guests." She stopped, surprised by the kindness. After a pause, she nodded. "All right, just one cup." Ravi prepared the tea himself and placed it on a small tray. Instead of sending it with staff, he carried it to the lounge area where Mira had quietly taken a seat. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup and stared at the steam rising from it. "You must meet many people here," she said suddenly, her eyes still fixed on the tea. "Yes," Ravi replied calmly. "Each one has a story, even if they don't share it. Sometimes I only see smiles, sometimes silence. But I try to listen, even without words." Mira looked up at him then, her eyes moist but steady. "Do you believe places can heal people?" Ravi thought for a moment. "Yes. A place can be like a friend. If it is warm and welcoming, it can make someone feel less alone." Mira pressed her lips together, then gave a faint nod. She didn't say more, but her silence was louder than any words. When she finally rose to return to her room, she whispered again, "Thank you." The word felt heavier than before, as if it carried not just politeness but real meaning. That night, Ravi sat at the desk long after the lobby had grown empty. He thought of Mira's question about places healing people. He realized she wasn't asking about places in general. She was asking if this hotel could heal her. The following day brought a rush of activity. A conference group checked in, filling the lobby with chatter and rolling suitcases. Ravi greeted them politely, but his eyes kept drifting toward the elevator, wondering if Mira would appear. By evening, he saw her again. She had changed clothes, wearing a simple blue dress, but the sadness had not left her face. As she walked past the desk, Ravi gently said, "Miss Mira, there's live music in the dining hall tonight. You might enjoy it." She hesitated. "I don't usually go to such places." "Sometimes music speaks when words cannot," Ravi replied softly. Something in his tone made her stop. After a long pause, she finally said, "Maybe. I'll try." That night, Ravi stood at a distance, watching as Mira entered the dining hall. She sat at a corner table, listening to the soft tunes of the violinist. For the first time since she arrived, her shoulders seemed to relax. Ravi smiled quietly. He did not know her story yet, but he knew one thing: she was beginning to let the hotel into her heart. And that was the first step toward healing. When the music ended, Mira looked around as though searching for him. Their eyes met across the hall, and she gave a small, genuine smile. Ravi nodded gently in return. In that moment, he felt his father's presence strongly, as though the old dream of the hotel was alive again. This was not just a business. It was a place where broken hearts could find light, even if only for a while. That night, Ravi's promise grew stronger: he would learn the secrets behind the smiles and silences of his guests, not to judge, but to understand, and to help them feel at home. The days passed quietly, and Ravi continued his work at the front desk. To most, he looked like a polite receptionist who greeted guests with patience and calmness. But within him, there was always watchfulness, listening, observing, and learning. Every morning, Mira came down to the lobby, often with a book in her hand, though she rarely turned the pages. She would sit in the corner lounge chair near the large window, looking outside as if waiting for something or perhaps someone. Ravi noticed her eyes lingered on people who walked past the hotel, yet she never left the safety of the building for long. One morning, as he arranged the check-in files, Ravi saw her again in her usual seat. The sunlight touched her face, and for the first time, he saw her smile faintly at the sight of two children holding ice cream cones outside. It was a fleeting smile, gone within seconds, but it told him there was still light hidden within her. He decided to approach. Carrying a tray with 2 cups of tea, he walked to her table. "Good morning, Miss Mira. I thought you might enjoy some tea. Would you mind if I sit for a moment?" She looked surprised, but after a pause, she nodded. "All right, thank you." They sipped quietly at first. Ravi did not rush her with questions. Instead, he spoke about the hotel, about how it once had a garden where guests enjoyed walking in the evenings. "My father believed flowers make people feel at home," he said, though he carefully kept his true identity hidden. Mira's eyes softened. "Your father sounds like a kind man." Ravi smiled gently. "Yes, he was. He always said people come to hotels carrying invisible bags. Some bags are filled with joy, some with sadness. He believed it was our duty to make their stay lighter." Mira looked down at her teacup, tracing the rim with her finger. "That sounds comforting," she whispered. There was silence, but it was not heavy. It was the kind of silence that allowed trust to grow slowly. Later that afternoon, while Mira rested in her room, other guests filled the lobby. A man named Arjun, a traveling salesman, complained loudly about the slow Wi-Fi. Ravi handled it with patience, offering a solution and even guiding him to a quieter corner where the signal was stronger. Then came an elderly woman, Mrs. D'Souza, who asked many questions about local attractions. Ravi answered kindly, though she repeated the same questions more than once. He realized she was lonely, traveling without family. As the day went on, Ravi understood more clearly what his father had meant. Every guest carried invisible stories. Some were loud, like Arjun's complaints. Some were quiet, like Mira's silence. And some were hidden in small details, like Mrs. D'Souza's repeated questions. That evening, Ravi noticed Mira walking slowly toward the dining hall again. She looked uncertain, as if she was forcing herself to step into a world she wasn't used to anymore. Ravi met her at the entrance and said softly, "There's a corner seat near the music. It's peaceful there." She gave him a grateful glance and followed his suggestion. The violinist played gently that night, and the soft notes filled the room. Mira sat with her tea, listening. Her eyes glistened, but this time with calmness, not fear. After the performance, as the guests began leaving, she walked to the front desk where Ravi stood. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I haven't listened to music like that in a long time. Thank you for suggesting it." Ravi smiled. "I'm glad you enjoyed it. Music has a way of reminding us that beauty still exists, even in difficult times." For a moment, it seemed she wanted to say more, but she only gave a small nod and returned to her room. Later that night, Ravi went through the guest logs. His eyes paused at her booking details. She had reserved the room for only 5 days. He felt a sense of urgency. If she left without opening up, he might never know the story behind her whispered words about safety. The next morning, when Mira came down again, Ravi decided to take a gentle step forward. "Miss Mira," he said carefully, "would you like to see the hotel garden? It's quiet and often overlooked by guests, but it's one of the best parts of the place." She hesitated, looking toward the doors. "The garden?" "Yes. Only a few steps outside, but still within the hotel grounds. You might like it." Something in his calm tone reassured her. Slowly, she agreed. They walked together to the back of the hotel, where a small but well-kept garden stretched out. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of jasmine. Flowers of different colors bloomed under the fading afternoon sun. A stone bench stood near the fountain. Mira sat down slowly, breathing deeply. For the first time since she arrived, her posture relaxed. She closed her eyes for a moment as if letting the air wash away something heavy inside her. "This place, it's peaceful," she said softly. Ravi sat on the other end of the bench, giving her space. "I often come here when I need clarity. The world feels calmer when surrounded by nature." She opened her eyes and looked at him. There was a hint of courage in her voice now. "Do you ever feel like you're carrying too much, but can't tell anyone?" Ravi met her gaze calmly. "Yes. Many people feel that way. But sometimes, sharing even a little of the burden makes it lighter." Her lips parted, as though she wanted to speak. For a moment, he thought she might finally share her secret. But then she shook her head slightly and whispered, "Maybe one day." Ravi did not press further. He simply nodded, giving her silence and respect. As the sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Mira sat quietly, and Ravi knew something important had shifted. The first crack had appeared in her wall of silence. And though she had not spoken her truth yet, she had taken the first step toward trust. The garden meeting stayed in Ravi's mind long after that evening. He had seen a change in Mira, small but important. She had spoken words that hinted at the weight she carried. Though she hadn't shared her full story, Ravi felt she was slowly moving toward trust. The next morning, the hotel bustled with activity. A tour group was checking out, filling the lobby with chatter and luggage. Ravi greeted each guest with a calm smile, helping them smoothly through the process. But even in the noise, he noticed Mira when she entered the lobby. She stood quietly near the staircase, holding a notebook in her hands. She didn't join the noise of the crowd. Instead, she waited until the lobby grew calmer before approaching the desk. "Good morning," she said softly. "Good morning, Miss Mira," Ravi replied warmly. "Did you visit the garden again?" Her lips curved slightly. "Yes. It helped me breathe better." Ravi was glad to hear it. He didn't ask more, but he could see something new in her eyes, a desire to talk, though fear still held her back. Later that afternoon, Ravi walked through the dining area. He noticed Mira sitting at a corner table, her notebook open, a pen resting between her fingers. She seemed deep in thought, staring at blank pages as though she wanted to write but couldn't. When she saw him pass by, she quickly closed the book, but not before he caught sight of words scribbled on the first page: "Starting again is harder than leaving." Ravi didn't comment, but the sentence stayed in his mind. That evening, the hotel welcomed a small group of new guests. Among them was a young man named Samir, who carried a guitar case. He greeted everyone with energy and often hummed tunes while walking. Ravi noticed Mira watching him from a distance in the lounge, her eyes following the way he played softly on the guitar strings when no one else was paying attention. Music seemed to draw something out of her. Ravi remembered how she had reacted to the violin a few nights earlier. Perhaps music was the key to opening the doors she kept closed. When Samir performed a short song in the lounge that night, guests clapped and smiled. Ravi joined them but kept his eyes on Mira. She didn't clap, yet her gaze was fixed on the sound, as though it stirred memories inside her. After the performance ended, Ravi approached her gently. "You seem to like music," he said. Mira looked startled, then admitted, "I used to, long ago." "Maybe you still do," Ravi replied. "Sometimes we forget what we once loved, but it doesn't leave us." She didn't answer, but she didn't deny it either. Instead, she looked at the notebook she carried and held it closer, as if the words inside connected to the music she had just heard. The following day, while arranging guest check-ins, Ravi noticed Mira again in the lounge. She had her notebook open and seemed to be writing slowly. After some time, she closed it, took a deep breath, and walked to the front desk. "Mr. Ravi," she said quietly, "thank you for suggesting the garden, and the music. I feel lighter these days." Ravi gave her a calm smile. "I'm glad. Sometimes, small things help more than we expect." Mira hesitated, then placed the notebook on the desk. "Would you keep this safe for me for a while?" Ravi was surprised but nodded gently. "Of course." She didn't explain why, but her eyes said enough. That notebook carried more than words, it carried her unspoken story. That night, Ravi didn't open it. He respected her trust. Instead, he placed it carefully in a locked drawer. Meanwhile, other guests continued to reveal small secrets of their own. The elderly woman, Mrs. D'Souza, returned to the desk every evening to ask the same questions about sightseeing. Ravi finally asked, "Would you like me to arrange a driver to take you around tomorrow?" Her eyes brightened. "Oh, I would love that. I don't like going alone." In that moment, Ravi realized her repeated questions were not forgetfulness, they were her way of asking for company. Another guest, Arjun the salesman, came to Ravi late at night. His voice, usually loud, was quiet now. "Do you think people ever get tired of traveling?" he asked suddenly. "Yes," Ravi replied. "Even if the world is big, the heart sometimes wants a place to rest." Arjun gave a short laugh, but his eyes were tired. "Maybe that's what I've been looking for all this time." Ravi listened, offering no judgment, only presence. He was beginning to understand his father's vision more deeply each day. The hotel wasn't just walls and rooms. It was a mirror to people's lives. By the fourth night, something unexpected happened. Mira approached Ravi in the lobby while most guests had gone to their rooms. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "Mr. Ravi," she said, "can I tell you something?" He nodded gently. "Of course. I'm here to listen." She took a deep breath, her eyes filling with unshed tears. "I didn't come here for a holiday. I came here because I was running away. I I needed a place where I could feel safe." The words hung heavy in the quiet lobby. Ravi didn't interrupt. He simply waited. Mira continued softly, "I don't know where I'm going after this. But for the first time in months, I don't feel completely alone." Her voice broke slightly at the end, and she looked away, ashamed of her own honesty. Ravi's reply was calm, filled with respect. "You are not alone here, Miss Mira. This place is meant for people like you to rest, to breathe, to heal. You don't need to carry everything by yourself." She looked at him then, her eyes meeting his, and for the first time, she allowed her tears to fall. In that moment, Ravi knew the wall around her heart had finally begun to crumble. After that night in the lobby, Ravi felt something had changed between him and Mira. Her words still echoed in his heart, "For the first time in months, I don't feel completely alone." She had finally allowed herself to speak, even if only a little. The next morning, the hotel seemed brighter. Guests moved in and out, the staff carried trays of breakfast, and the clinking of cutlery filled the air. But amid the routine, Ravi kept an eye on the elevator, waiting for Mira. When she stepped out, wearing a light green dress this time, there was still sadness in her eyes, but also a hint of calmness that had not been there before. "Good morning, Miss Mira," he greeted warmly. "Good morning," she replied, her voice soft but not as strained as before. She paused for a moment, then added, "Could we walk in the garden again? If you're not too busy." Ravi smiled gently. "Of course. Give me a moment." He handed the desk duties to another staff member and walked with her to the back garden. The flowers were blooming in the morning sun, and the air smelled fresh. Mira sat on the stone bench while Ravi stood nearby, giving her space. For a while, she said nothing. She only looked at the fountain where water flowed gently. Then she spoke in a low voice, almost as if telling the fountain instead of him. "I used to be a teacher," she began. "I loved working with children. Their laughter, their curiosity, it gave me joy. But then life started changing, and I felt like I was losing control." She stopped, pressing her fingers together tightly. Ravi did not ask her to continue, but his silence gave her courage. "I came here because I wanted to find a place where I could think clearly. Somewhere no one knew me. Somewhere I could just breathe." Her voice broke slightly at the end, but she quickly straightened her shoulders. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," she whispered. "Maybe," Ravi said softly, "because sometimes strangers are safer than those we know. Strangers don't judge. They just listen." Mira looked at him, and for the first time, she gave a small but real smile. "Yes. That must be it." They sat quietly for a while, the sound of the fountain filling the silence. Later that day, as Ravi returned to the front desk, he was met by one of the managers, Mr. Kapoor. He was an older man, sharp in his suit, who had worked in the hotel for many years. "Ravi," he said, narrowing his eyes. "You seem unusually interested in the guests. You spend a lot of time with them." Ravi kept his expression calm. "Isn't that part of our duty? Guests should feel cared for." Kapoor adjusted his tie. "Yes, but don't cross the line. We are staff, not friends. Remember your position." Ravi only nodded. But inside, his heart felt heavy. Kapoor's words showed exactly what had gone wrong with the hotel. Staff had forgotten that behind every guest was a human being, not just a number or a bill. That evening, Ravi helped Mrs. D'Souza, the elderly lady, into a car he had arranged for her sightseeing. Her eyes sparkled as she held his hand. "You are kind, young man. This hotel is lucky to have you." Her words touched him deeply, though she had no idea the hotel was, in fact, his. Later, in the dining hall, Samir strummed his guitar again. Guests gathered, clapping and humming along. Ravi noticed Mira sitting quietly at her table, but this time, she was not only listening, she was writing in her notebook as the music played. When the song ended, she caught Ravi's eye and gave him a nod. He understood, music was opening a door inside her, helping her remember who she was before the sadness took over. As the night grew late and the guests left the hall, Mira approached the front desk. She placed her notebook in front of Ravi and whispered, "Would you read a page? Just one." Ravi hesitated, not wanting to break her trust. But her eyes told him this was her choice. Gently, he opened the notebook. On the page was a simple line written in neat handwriting, "I came here to run away, but maybe I am finding a reason to stay." Ravi closed the notebook with care. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "Words like these carry hope." Mira lowered her gaze, but there was a faint color in her cheeks. "It feels easier to write than to speak," she admitted. "Sometimes," Ravi replied, "writing is just another way of speaking, only more honest." That night, after Mira went back to her room, Ravi stayed in the lobby longer than usual. His thoughts were divided. On one side was Mira, slowly opening her heart. On the other side was the hotel itself, with staff like Mr. Kapoor who had forgotten the values his father once built. He realized something important: it wasn't enough for him to quietly observe as an undercover worker. If he wanted to bring back the heart of this place, he would eventually have to reveal who he truly was. But not yet. Not until he understood every corner of his guests' stories. Not until he proved, even to himself, that this hotel could still be a place of healing. As the night deepened, Ravi whispered to himself, "Father, I think I'm beginning to see what you wanted me to learn." It was never about running a business. It was about holding people's hearts gently, even if only for a while. In the quiet lobby, those words felt like a promise. And upstairs, in room 404, Mira wrote another line in her notebook, unaware that her story was slowly becoming tied to his. The hotel grew busier as the week moved on. A wedding party booked several rooms, filling the corridors with laughter, music, and the fragrance of flowers. The lobby was alive with colors, and yet Ravi's attention often drifted toward the quiet figure of Mira. She was changing slowly but clearly. She no longer kept her eyes fixed on the floor. Sometimes she even greeted other guests with a polite smile. Ravi noticed she carried her notebook more often, as if writing gave her strength. One evening, after the wedding group left for their celebration outside, the hotel grew calmer. Mira sat in the lounge with her notebook open. Ravi brought her tea, and this time she didn't look surprised. Instead, she gestured for him to sit. "I've been writing again," she said softly. "That's good," Ravi replied. "Writing is like breathing for the heart." She smiled faintly. "I stopped writing months ago. Everything felt heavy, and I thought words would not help. But lately, it feels like maybe they can heal." Ravi nodded. "Words are like friends. They stay when the world feels empty." Mira looked at him thoughtfully. "You speak like someone who has carried heavy things too." Her words touched him. He wanted to answer honestly, but his secret stood between them. She thought he was just a front desk worker. She didn't know that the hotel was his, that he was living behind a mask to understand the truth of his father's dream. Before he could reply, footsteps interrupted them. Mr. Kapoor, the manager, entered the lobby. His sharp eyes moved from Ravi to Mira, and his lips tightened. "Ravi," he said firmly, "I need a word with you." Ravi excused himself and followed Kapoor to a corner. The older man crossed his arms. You spend far too much time with this guest. Be careful. Owners don't like staff wasting hours talking when they should be working. Ravi met his eyes calmly. Isn't caring for guests part of the work? Kapoor frowned. Guests come and go. Our job is to keep things running, not to become their friends. The words pierced Ravi's heart, but he remained silent. If Kapoor knew the truth that Ravi was the owner himself, everything would change. But he wasn't ready. Not yet. Later that night, as the lobby quieted, Meera approached again. She seemed nervous, holding her notebook close. Mr. Ravi, she whispered, can I tell you something more? Something I haven't told anyone here. Of course, he said gently. You can trust me. She took a shaky breath. When I said I was a teacher, it's true. But the truth is, I left my job because I felt lost. The laughter of children used to give me joy, but then one day, I realized I couldn't smile anymore. Everything felt heavy. I thought maybe if I left, I would feel free. But leaving didn't give me freedom. It only gave me loneliness. Her voice trembled, but she went on. That's why I came here. I wanted to find a place where I could feel safe, where I could start again. Ravi listened with quiet respect. You are stronger than you think, Miss Meera. It takes courage to admit when you feel lost. And sometimes, leaving isn't running away, it's finding space to breathe. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't hide them. I don't know if I can go back to teaching, or even what I want to do next. But being here, it makes me feel less empty. Ravi's heart ached at her words. He wanted to tell her she wasn't just in a hotel, she was in a place built with love by his father, a place meant to hold stories like hers. But again, he kept silent. The next day brought a surprise. A group of businessmen checked in for a conference, and among them was a man who recognized Ravi. Ravi? Is that you? The man said loudly in the lobby. I remember you from the university. What are you doing here at the front desk? Ravi froze. The guests nearby turned to look. Meera, standing a short distance away, also glanced at him curiously. With a calm smile, Ravi replied, I'm just working here for now. He quickly diverted the conversation, handing the man his keys. But the moment left a shadow. Meera's eyes lingered on him longer than before, filled with quiet questions she did not voice. That evening, she came to him in the lounge. Mr. Ravi, are you really just a front desk worker? She asked softly. His heart skipped a beat. He could see her trust balancing on the edge of truth and silence. Ravi chose his words carefully. Sometimes, we wear roles to understand the world better. Sometimes we step into smaller shoes so we can see what's hidden. Meera tilted her head, trying to understand. She didn't press him further, but her eyes told him she sensed there was more to his story. As she walked back to her room, Ravi felt both fear and relief. Fear that his secret might be discovered before he was ready. Relief that perhaps, when the time came, she would understand. That night, he stood in the empty lobby, looking at his father's portrait on the wall. Soon, father, he whispered. Soon I must reveal who I am. But first, I must finish listening to their hearts. And upstairs, Meera sat by her window, writing in her notebook, trust is like a lamp in the dark. Today, mine flickered again. The hotel was quiet that morning, the sunlight streaming gently through the large glass doors. Ravi stood behind the front desk, straightening papers, yet his mind was elsewhere. He had watched Meera for a week, and each day she grew stronger. Her small smiles, the careful writing in her notebook, and her willingness to step into the garden or listen to music all showed that trust was slowly returning to her heart. He knew the moment had come to reveal a part of the truth. Not everything, not yet, but enough to show that he understood more than any ordinary staff member could. Meera appeared in the lobby, carrying her notebook. She wore a soft pink dress, her hair neatly tied back. There was a quiet determination in her step that had not been there before. She paused by the front desk, looking at him with a faint question in her eyes. "Good morning, Miss Mira," Ravi said gently. "Would you like to walk in the garden today?" She nodded and followed him outside. The flowers glowed softly in the morning sun. Birds chirped in the distance, and the fountain murmured a gentle song. They sat on the stone bench as Ravi began carefully. "I want to share something with you," he said softly. "I am not only a front desk worker here. I am the owner of this hotel. I returned to live behind the desk so I could understand the true life of this place, to learn from the guests themselves." Mira's eyes widened in surprise. She looked at him, searching for a sign of trickery or arrogance. But all she found was honesty. "You mean, all this time, you were," she whispered. "Yes," Ravi replied calmly. "I wanted to see what my father's dream meant in reality. Not from an office, not from reports, but from the lives of those who stay here." For a moment, she said nothing. She stared at the flowers, then back at him. Her lips trembled slightly, but she smiled faintly. I didn't expect that. I thought you were just someone doing his job." Ravi smiled gently. "And yet, here I am, learning from you and everyone else. Your story, your courage, it teaches me more than any report ever could." Mira took a deep breath, feeling lighter. I understand now. Maybe trust really does grow slowly, like flowers. You have been patient with me, and it helped me heal." Ravi nodded. "Healing takes time. And it is different for everyone. But your words, your willingness to open even a little, that is the first step toward finding peace again." She looked down at her notebook and then handed it to him. "This is for you," she said softly. "Not everything, but parts of my journey. I want someone to know what it meant to me to feel safe here." Ravi took the notebook carefully. "Thank you, Miss Mira. I promise to keep it safe and respect every word." A gentle silence followed. Birds sang, and the fountain whispered. Both of them felt the weight of months lifting, replaced by understanding and trust. Later that day, Ravi returned to the lobby to help with a small group of guests. Mrs. D'Souza was ready for her sightseeing tour, and this time, she had a companion arranged, a kind driver who would keep her company. Ravi smiled as she thanked him warmly, her eyes shining. Samir, the young musician, was playing softly in the lounge. Mira had joined a few other guests, listening quietly, her notebook closed beside her. She laughed softly at a simple joke someone made, and Ravi felt a deep satisfaction. The hotel, once filled with silence and hesitation, was beginning to feel alive again. That evening, the lobby was calm. Ravi walked up to Mira, who was sitting near the window. "You know," he said, "this hotel is not just about rooms or service. It is about hearts. Yours, mine, every guest who walks through those doors. That is what my father wanted me to see." Mira looked at him, tears forming but a smile on her lips. "I think I understand now. And I feel ready to face the world again, not just hide from it." Ravi nodded. "It is okay to be ready slowly. The important thing is that you are ready." She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. Then she opened them and looked directly at him. "Thank you, Ravi. For listening, for patience, for everything." Ravi smiled gently. "No, thank you, Mira. For trusting. For letting me witness a part of your journey." As night fell, the hotel's lights glowed softly, painting the lobby in warm colors. Ravi walked to the portrait of his father on the wall. He whispered quietly, "Father, I think I finally understand. It was never just about running a hotel. It was about giving people a place to be heard, to feel safe, and to heal. Upstairs, Mira wrote one last line in her notebook before closing it: "I came to run away, but I found a reason to stay. I found hope again." Ravi looked out the window, watching the stars appear one by one. The hotel was alive again, not just with guests, but with trust, kindness, and quiet understanding. And for the first time since he had returned, Ravi felt complete. He was no longer just an owner observing from behind a desk. He was part of the lives of the people who came here, holding their stories with care, just as his father had hoped. The hotel had become a home for hearts, a place where secrets could be shared, and trust could grow. And for Mira and Ravi, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope, healing, and the quiet certainty that they were not alone.